Coaching in Session,
your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
If you are a person that considers yourself a high achiever, someone who's successful, someone who has risen to the challenge and fought through the gauntlets of life and has found themselves extremely wealthy, maybe successful, that's a great place to be. But that's not going to be everyone who's listening to this episode, right? Now, this is not to say that you don't have endeavors or you don't have achievements that are not worth mentioning, because maybe you've overcome a challenge in your life. Maybe you have, beat something that was unbeatable. Maybe you got through when there were so many obstacles and roadblocks that made your view obscured to the other side. This is all to say that when a person is trying to vie for something in life, there's going to be different journeys for that individual. Some people can have a straight path and they get to where they want to be very very simple. A to B, I got there, right? There was no challenge. It was this, it was that. We can chalk it up to luck, or we can chalk it up to the ambition of or the level of mindset for that individual. But then we can look at other people and we can look at how they're making their life harder, which we talked about last week. We can look back at the week prior and we can look at how all the people are not being motivated to take action and not turn that motivation into discipline. All of these things are compounding to figure out where we're trying to get to. Well, something happens when we reach capacity, and I talk about this metaphor quite a bit. If you have a 1,500 square foot home and eventually you are moving in and you only got a couple of things, well, eventually you might say, I'm going to go to Amazon and Walmart and IKEA and Ashley's, and you're going to figure out and rooms to go, and I'm going to figure out, what am I going to put in this home? And eventually you put 1,500 square feet of stuff in your home. Now there's no more room for you, right? Because literally everything is in the way. You don't have walking room. You don't have a room to breathe because everything is already usurped. And so we have a couple options, right? Number one, we can declutter, or number two, we can expand. And so we can say, okay, we're going to get some storage and we can put our stuff in storage. Maybe we say we're going to get a bigger home. So we get a 2,000 square foot home or a 3,500 square foot home. Now, eventually what's going to happen is we're going to fill all the storage. We're going to fill the 2,000 or 3,500 square foot homes. And we're going to wonder why we have no room again. And the reason is because we were giving ourselves a mindset of, there's a cap that I have to reach, that I will reach because I have reached it before. And then I need to figure out how to expand. Well, this idea is very similar to the hidden plateau that many high achievers are going to be dealing with and facing. I wrote this article here, TUS Part 73, The Hidden Plateau, Why High Performers Stop Growing and How to Break Through, is essentially talking about these 8 steps here, right? Number 1, what is the hidden plateau, which we're going to get in a minute. 2, the warning signs of stagnant growth. 3, the psychology behind why high performers flatline. 4, how to redefine your identity at the top. 5, the power of strategic discomfort. 6, the value of no map goals. 7, auditing and elevating your circle. And then 8, deep reflection as a growth tool. Now, these 8 talking points, and all of this is going to be explained in the article here, but I'm just going to give you some insight on what these steps are. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what is a plateau, right? A plateau is going to be an area where there's no more room to go, right? There's nothing above it, right? So you are elevated above everything else. And so there's nothing above you. And it feels as if there's no escape, right? There's no stairway down. There's no ladders down. It's just an elevated platform. And so you are at this higher place and you might have climbed there and you might have worked, to be in this position, but then you're looking around and you're trying to figure out what your next step is and you feel as if you're stuck. And so the idea is, this hidden plateau is talking about how some people, they reach a ceiling and they can't go up anymore. In Texas, we have single-story homes quite often, right? Because it's easier to cool, it's easier to build, because for the 2 stories homes, you need like more concrete and you have to dig, and there might be limestone. And so there's a lot more to be said, and it costs more typically to build a 2-story home. Now, we can talk about homes for a quick minute. It's a tangent, but I'm going to do it anyway. A 2-story home can be a good thing, right? Especially if you're going to have this home for later on in life, because now you might say, I have to, climb the stairs. And so you're getting a stairmaster in at the age of 70, at the age of 80. And that's going to keep you alive and aware a lot longer than if you just kind of lived on a single-story home. Now, this is all a mindset thing, right? It's a mindset trick that people don't necessarily pay attention to. This is why putting people in a nursing home who are elderly is a bad thing, right? Because now they don't have any autonomy. Now they're not as active because they're just locked in this place. And of course, you can put yourself in a really nice one where you can walk around a little bit in the gardens and things like that. But the reality is, people are bringing your food. People are making your beds. People are making sure that you're okay. If you need something, it's a push of a button. So again, this assisted living might sound really nice, but it's taking away the human urge for wanting to be sustained. And when we are looking at achievement now instead of just life, imagine if you have achieved everything that you thought you wanted. You got the house, you got the cars, you got a successful business, and all of a sudden you're giving yourself this mindset of, well, what's next? And this is why many of the clients who are these high achievers or many of these high performers, they come to me is not because they need help with their business or career. They need help finding fulfillment. They need help trying to figure out their family life or what they're going to be doing next, because they have been so entwined in, chasing the top, and they finally reached that plateau. And now they're trying to figure out, well, how do I use this to my advantage? Do I parachute down? Do I, look for new heights? Or maybe do I just remain here and be unhappy? Well, there's always an option, right? There's always a choice. You don't have to remain stagnant. You don't have to remain still if you don't want to. We are not chained and locked down, and we can go live life and be filled with exuberance, and we can figure out what meaning we would like to have every single day. If you are a person that cannot see your growth and potential as something that's viable, then this is not for you. Or again, TUSs are not for people who are at the rock bottom trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from. People who are reading these TUS are people who are saying, hey, I have achieved so much, but there's something else that I need to be looking at. And so this is a wake-up call. And so we get to number 2, right? The warning signs of stagnant growth, right? In the article, we talk about how, you can do all these tips and tricks and ideas and routines to help you. But the reality is you just have to get clear on, what's happening, right? What are you doing? What are you not doing? Because maybe using relationships as an example, we can use anything as an example, but relationships, right? Let's say you are a guy and you finally get the girl. You did all of these wonderful things together, right? You bought her flowers, you would take her out to eat, you would take her shopping, and then all of a sudden you have her, maybe you got your sex from her, and now it's kind of like, I'm not going to shower her with gifts anymore. I'm not going to send her good morning texts anymore. I'm not going to take her out to eat anymore. And eventually, you know what's going to happen? The lack of communication or the breakdown in communication, and, she's going to say, well, why am I with this person, right? Yeah, he used to do all these things and maybe I feel attached to him. We're going to be talking about that on an article coming soon. But the reality is, that, there's no reason for her to stay. And so she might find a guy that's giving her all of those things that made her fall in love with you. So that guy is giving her text messages and back rubs and, showing that he cares. And that can be enough to make someone say, I'm walking away from this relationship. I'm walking away from this situation. And so sometimes if you find yourself in that stagnant growth where these things are kind of every day, and there's nothing new and there's nothing old. And you just kind of are just like existing together, right? Some people, they call it roommates, where you're just having a roommate. Then this is a warning sign for you to pay attention. Now, this could be true in your career also. Maybe you are just stuck in this same position with barely any movement. Maybe you're not getting any type of pay increases. And I'm not saying that you need to get a pay increase every single year or something like that. But guess what? Inflation is going to be going up. Cost of living is going to be going up. And if you're going to be staying in a position where you're making the same amount of money, especially if you have been that person that has been trying to fill your life or lifestyle with, with excessive things, you're going to find yourself at a point where you're going to be struggling financially. Then we get into the idea, the psychology behind why high performance flatline. But, this is all about the mental and emotional. And again, the mind can be a great tool for something, right? And I think of it as like rust. You could have a pair of pliers, right? But if you leave them outside and the rain hits them, the elements hit them, eventually it's going to become rusted shut, right? So those same pliers are not going to be able to do the job that they once did. The mind is very similar to that, where if you're not nurturing your mind, right? If you're not giving it something positive, whether it be affirmations, mantras, goals, living circumstances, the mind is going to deteriorate or rust. And it's going to see things as not viable. So even though it might seem like, common sense for someone saying, hey, why don't you do this instead? They can't see the out. They can't see what they have to do next because they're so caught up with the rust, right? They can't move as they would like to or as they should. And so what we have to do is get the WD-40 and start to take away that rust and eventually start to wiggle away that rust, right? To try to get the movement back, right? Therapy, for example, after an accident or injury, you don't just kind of, go into therapy and you're doing all of this stuff, right? You start something very small, right? You just kind of do some leg raises or something, and it might not seem like a big deal to the people who don't have an injury, but for them, they might be going through the gauntlet. They might be struggling. And so depending on where you are, right, this is why you can flatline. And so you might say, well, what's the point? Because now you're looking at what you could have done versus what you're doing now. And you might also look at, you grew this fast this year, but now this year you're doing this. And so you might start to give yourself those negative ideas or mindsets of, well, if I'm doing this right now, the next option is this. Or maybe it could be this, but then maybe you try something different and it's not that. And so you're just literally trying to figure out how you can get through, how can you break through. And oftentimes when your mind is stuck, it is stuck for good. It's almost like an engine that seizes because of water, where if water gets in the engine will seize and you have to like crank it. And it's very difficult. If you ever watch a video, you can like look at how difficult it is. And the same thing can be true for the mind. When the mind gets locked, in order for you to break that lock and to break free from it, it can be extremely difficult. Sometimes you need the strength of 2-3 people just to get it, or some type of machinery just to get that engine unlocked. It's important that we figure out how we can refine our identity now, right? Because what's an engine in a car that can't even start? Just a piece of metal, right? Just something that's going to rust away with time unless we give it purpose again, unless we say, hey, you're meant to be motorized and you're meant to, push these pistons and to help these axles turn the wheel so we can move forward, so we can have some propellant in life. But yet, if we just say, like, this is who I am, this is who I became, and now you are just this person, right? How many people they finally make it where they're just this big time celebrity and they do this and eventually they just become irrelevant. Or maybe they're just doing things wrong. I think of people like Ariana Grande, right? She can sing very good, but she's having issues with her eating and her self-image. All of these things are going to be things that she has to do the mindset work for, because in the height of her career, she could probably be bigger than Taylor Swift if she wanted to, but she allowed relationships and emotions to stagnate her to a degree that is, number one, not healthy, but number two, not beneficial for her long term. So We can say that, Ariana Grande needs to have a life coach, but the reality is, will she change? Because she won't change unless she wants to change. Because she can give herself all of these excuses to why she's doing what she's doing. And in her mind, it's viable. And it's not until typically a wake up call will someone change. Because she can be like, what's the girl? I forget her name. Amy Winehouse, right? Good looking girl, but then drugs and things like that. Britney Spears, similar. They high level achievers, of course, but then something happened in their life where it caused them to kind of go haywire. Now, this is not to say that everyone who's in the limelight or everyone who's a superstar celebrity is going to fall into this lifestyle or into this situation. This is a mindset. This is something you can either allow to happen or not to allow to happen, for lack of better words. And so we have to be strategic, right? So there's the power of strategic discomfort. And we have to learn how to reintroduce discomfort, right? I love the idea of starting off, right? Building something. But then things stagnate, where everything is nice and everything is perfect and all the things are done for you. And you're like, well, what's the point, right? There's no challenge in this anymore. And so many people, they just kind of lean back and, they're not pushing on the gas anymore. But if you start to give yourself some more discomfort, right? And it could be so small. Like, for example, the idea of, all right, maybe you work so hard to get a car, right? It could be anything, but you work so hard to get a car. It could be a house, it could be whatever. But you are now driving every day to work, right? You're spending money on gas and things like that. But now you're finding that you're packing on some pounds. How did this happen, right? You work so hard to get this car so you can not be in the rain anymore, or the cold, or in the hot sun, trying to get yourself to work. And now you're getting all this weight, right? Because you're not getting the steps that you used to, right? Your mind is becoming more negative and burdened because you're not getting the fresh air that you would, or you're not seeing so many different imageries or feeling every single step of the journey, right? Because people will love nothing more than the end result. But then when they finally realize that they got everything that they dreamed of and wanted, that they have missed out on the beauty of what life entails, and that's a journey. And so when many high achievers and performers, they reach a plateau in life, they look around, there's nothing else to gain. This is where they feel like they feel stuck or they flatline. And this happens to too many people in the world because they don't give themselves a goal behind a goal. When we look at the next part, the value of a no map goal, this area happens naturally. So for example, when you prepare for retirement, and it provides great benefits if you can learn how to harness it while reaching new success peaks. So basically, in a no map goal, you're talking about how you're not necessarily mapping out every bit of it, but you're allowing what you would like to happen almost naturally. So maybe you are, experimenting with, running marathons, and you don't know which marathon you want to run, right? You can run a Spartan race, a Tough Mudder, there's a zombie races. So there's all these different options, right? And of course, you might, do some levels of training for it, but you will notice a 5K Tough Mudder or 5K Spartan race or a 5K zombie race is going to stimulate the mind very differently. For example, the zombie race, you get lives, and it's like flag football where they give you, 3 flags, and the zombies that are situated on this course are trying to get your flags. The whole aspect is, can you run and dodge all these zombies and make it out alive? And you get 3 lives essentially, right? The 3 flags. Well, that is a very different mindset than someone who just runs a 5K, right? I'm just going to run this straight line or this path that they determined for me. Maybe Tough Mudder, very different than doing all the obstacles and liftings and stuff for the Spartan races. So again, it's a different type of mindset, but yet the goal is still the same. And so we have a no map goal, but yet we just don't know how we're going to get there exactly, but we know where we're going. We give ourselves the intention for it. One of the things you have to understand, I think, is very important is when you're doing this, you need to look at your circle very clearly. And your circle is going to be all the people that are around you, The people that influence you could be your family members, your colleagues, workers, board members. We can go down the list of all the people that could be there present in your life. It's to say that if you want to break through these plateaus, you're going to need some good people with you. Most people, when it comes to someone else's greatness, it's not their responsibility to help unleash it. Now, of course, you can get a coach, revenconcepts.com. We're going to help you, right? That's our mission, right? Like that's our purpose. If you want to grow, we're going to make sure you grow, right? If you have a tree that is not growing, we're going to make sure we change out the soil. We're going to give you fertilizer. We're going to figure out the best temperature, the best areas for this growth to happen, right? We're not going to stagnate. And so when you can surround yourself with people who are looking at all of those things for you also, as well as you for them, then you just have people that are just kind of growing, right? Think of a good day in the stock market, right? Things are going up. We're up 1,000 points, right? Versus, oh, hey, we didn't have any growth today. Now, of course, that can be a good day if you don't lose money, but is it a great day since you didn't make any money, right? So we're trying to get up, right? We're trying to go up. We're trying to escalate, and not in the terms of escalate, like fights and things like that, but escalate who we are. Because just because you have gone so far doesn't mean you can't go further. Then we look at the last part, which is arguably maybe the most important part, is we need to reflect on everything we have done and everything that we think we would like to do. This is important because we get down to the root cause. This is not just journaling. This is not just our coaching sessions where we talk about things that we need to do. This is literally from the start of our life to the end of our life, what needs to be done. I think of if you are building a home, maybe the builders come in and they pour the concrete, the foundation, and the foundation is perfect. And they come in and they do all the framing, and the framing is perfect. But then they don't do any plumbing and they don't do any electrical. But they put up the drywall and it's perfect. And they put the roof on and it's perfect. And yet you have a home that, yeah, sure, is, 4 walls, but is not modernized. It has no electricity, has no running water. And so essentially you're just living in a shed. Of course, you might say that this is exactly what you wanted, but most people who are building homes, they would like to have some level of plumbing, some level of electricity, or, just the amenities that are going to help make their life a little bit easier. Stove, for example, right? How are you going to stay warm in the winter? How are you going to stay cool in the summer, right? Maybe you have a lake you can go, but you're not going to do that in the winter. So you need to have some type of fire pit or some type of fireplace or, like a wood burning stove, something that's going to help you, right? Of course, you can add all of these things later in life, but we need to be able to reflect on what we need. When a builder is asking you, hey, what do you want in your home? Like you literally have hundreds, if not thousands of different things of tiles and backsplashes and cabinets that you can add to your home. But then sometimes we can say, well, we just want a home, right? And if we just kind of give ourselves a blanket idea of what we want, then there's going to be things that we see when we get it that, oh, I wish it was that, or, like this or that. Or maybe you see someone else who has something different and you're like, oh, that would be nice. I wish I thought about that. And so we are constantly chasing something. And this is what happens with a lot of high achievers, where they're constantly chasing everything. But then again, you can look at what you have attained, right? You can say, hey, let me look back at the life that I've built. And that can be enough, right? I think of, parents. You spend so much time on your children, watching them grow, taking care of them, taking them to soccer practice or basketball practice or whatever. And at some point, they don't even call you on the weekend. At some point, they are gone and maybe they're dealing with their own family. And you're there left to think, look at those days that have happened in the past, right? When they were young and they were yelling mommy and daddy, and they're doing all of these things that maybe you were trying to pull your hair out and super stressed about. And now it's just a memory. But those moments, right? Those stepping stones of life, essentially are one day just a reflection. You can see how far you come, because one of the best things you can do when you're trying to change is to look back at where you started. Fitness, day 1, take a picture. And then month 9, take a picture. You're going to look different. Now, it might be a little bit tighter in some areas. You might have, got rid of some fat or something like that. Maybe you dropped some pounds, whatever the goal is, right? We say, wow, we are looking different, right? We're making some changes. Now, of course, I'm sure people will love things to be abrupt and instant. I'm sure people who finally hit plateaus, like the ones I'm talking about in this article, would love nothing more than to just have the next peak in life, to say, you know what? This is the next part of where I'm going, and this is going to be fabulous, and I'm doing everything that is so amazing. Yeah, sure, right? That would make life super easy. But there is something to be said about life, right? Those moments when we feel stuck, those moments when we fail to understand the things that built us. If we slow down and we say, hey, let's reflect, we can look at what we need to do. In this article here, TUS Part 73, The Hidden Plateau, Why High Performers Stop Growing and How to Break Through. Now, I go into details and all of these steps, and this article is going to be of a longer read. And so I encourage people to work through these steps as they are pertaining to you. All right. This is so important. I cannot stress this enough, because if you understand what the hidden plateau is, right, that's easy. But then you might not be able to see the warning signs, right? You might have to spend quite a bit of time looking at all the warning signs that have happened up until this point and that are happening right now. Because if the smoke detector is going off and there's a fire in your home, you're not going to say, well, let me wait until the fire reaches my door until I feel the heat for me to take action. No, the smoke detector is telling you there's something wrong. If you can't look at those warning signs, then that is something that you have to be paying more attention to. So that'll be your number 2. But maybe you're really good at that. You can look at the warning signs, but then you need to look at, the psychology behind the high performers, right? The psychology behind you. What makes you tick? What made you tick? What will make you tick in the future? What is taking precedence now? Because some people are so focused on their family in the beginning, and then eventually so focused on work, or vice versa, so focused on work and then so focused on family. You have to look at where you're going to be, right? Because if we're just kind of shooting a move at target where it is right now, we'll always miss. We need to shoot where it will be. So we need to figure out where we're going to be and aim for that. Then, of course, we go down the list and you just have to figure out where you are. And I encourage everyone, check out the link in the description box below. You're going to be able to get to this article, learn more about how you can break free from any plateau in your life that you're currently residing in. There is no cap in life. And I understand that you might do all the things that society tells you that you need. You need a big house, you need fast cars, you need to go travel the world. But maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you just want to experience life for every single day, every single second, rather than just, it would be nice to just have everything all done at once. Most people who they get this life, they get this, semblance of success, of reaching the top 1%, or of, just being a person who, has everything and doesn't want or desire anything else materialistically. They find themselves missing on the joy of life. I encourage you once more, check out this article, TUS Part 73, right down below. If you need help breaking free from your plateaus, if you are a successful person and you're trying to figure out why you're not happy or why you're not finding joy in your life, it can be as simple as just a consultation, a phone call. We can get you right on track and steer you in the direction that you need to be going in. There is no reason to be stuck or to feel as if you're stagnant in life. You get to choose to either be a caged bird or fly free in the sky. And if I had to look at the 2 options there, I would say the sky would be the more viable choice for the majority of people that are trying to live the best life that they can.